What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host. Super Bowl time. Got the birds and they call them the bees, but that didn't really work. The Chiefs also in the Super Bowl against the I don't know what I'm talking about. Joining me to talk to the birds, Anthony Gargano, 97.5, The Fan. What's up, man? How are we doing?
What's going on, Will? Hi, everything good?
Yeah. I mean, I like the week before the Super Bowl because I'm also wearing glasses for some reason the last 2 days. I don't even wear glasses. I don't know what's going on, honestly.
Hey, look good on you, man.
I appreciate it. Somebody said I look less punchable when I wear these, so I'm going with it. And somebody was like, actually, you look more punchable. But anyway, I digress. Birds are back in the Super Bowl, man. What's the like? You know, I remember in 2017 being in Minnesota and like so John Breach and I every year before the Super Bowl, we haven't been the last couple of years because of COVID and whatnot, but like we take a lap around the Super Bowl, around the stadium, and like gauge the vibe, check out the prices, look at the merch, see what kind of weird jerseys we can find. I have never seen anything like that Eagles Pats Super Bowl. And one, it was like cold as hell outside, so everybody was inside, but it was like this insane surge of just like rabid energy from Eagles fans because they knew what they were like. They knew what they had in front of them. They wanted it so bad. They're all hammered. They're just like chanting. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. I'm wondering, like, is the energy in the city like sort of is Philly the same for this team as it was for that team?
Yeah. Listen, obviously, your first is your first. All right, like you'll always remember your first. It'll be special. And remember, this is
Super Bowl titles. You're talking, right? Yeah,
well, I mean, whatever you want. It works in everything, man. You're first, right?
Hey, look, my first beer this afternoon. I will remember it. Like,
Exactly. But this town was so starved for a Super Bowl, right? Like, rich, sports-heavy town. And so it was like this explosion of energy. I was in Minnesota too, and you're right. Like that was the way it was. But this town is so sports nuts that it just loves it. It embraces it. It's part of its identity. That yes, the energy's the same. People went nuts. So after they won the NFC title game against the Niners, I don't know if you saw some of the footage, but Broad Street was
people were like falling off a light post and stuff. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, they literally greased the poles in Philadelphia. I kid you not. Now listen, I grew up in this town, so I grew up in South Philly, and there used to be an Italian festival where they would grease the poles, and you would try to climb the greased poles, right? Like just like in New York City, that was the whole thing. Well, they do that. But it doesn't stop anybody, right? Like, most people scale poles, climbing stanchions. I mean, but the beauty is, and this is why these people are special. The beauty is, it's love, man. It's like Woodstock. It is. It's unbelievable. I saw it with the Phillies, and during their World Series run, singing and chanting and hugging. Like it's brother, trust me, it's all love, it's just
internal. It's internal love, like within Philly. Like externally, it's like I think you know what I mean. Like it's like you describe it. You know what I'm saying? Like the thing you describe.
Yeah, well, if you're gonna wear Niners, you're right. If you're gonna put Niners panties on the Rocky statue, I mean, probably won't go over well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you're going, but yes, it's so fascinating because there is like this whole language that we all have down here. So go birds is a salutation. So you'll see someone go birds, go birds. And like that'll happen in the convenience stores and airports and where you have it. It's pretty wild. It's special too. I mean, I gotta tell you, Will, I've covered sports for a long time.
Last night, I was walking through downtown Raleigh last night, saw a dude in an Eagles jersey, and I like just blurted out "Go Birds." He's like, "Yeah, go Birds." It's like that's you're right. It's just like how Philly people communicate.
Yeah, it's a salutation. It's a connection. It means something. I think it's special. I think it's really beautiful in a lot of ways. I've covered sports for a long time. I was in New York, Chicago. I traveled around the country extensively covered all kinds of games. I used to write 5,000 word Sunday pieces. And this story is so interesting. It's so fascinating. Jerry Longman in the New York Times wrote a little bit about it, which I thought he captured some of it really well. But it's a beautiful thing, man. It's organic, it's real, and they're just into it.
Okay. I think it's awesome. Like if there weren't various like rivalries with like I'm a Braves guy, so like inherently like I just can't like
Of course.
Yeah. So it's like
I respect that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I have to hate the Phillies, even though like Trey Turner, a freaking NC State guy. Like, great, glad you got him. That's fantastic. The Andy Reid angle is, I think, going to be severely downplayed by both the Eagles and Andy Reid. Do you think that they are full of it and that this is a huge, huge deal to Andy Reid?
Yeah, I think it is. I know it is. I know Andy very, very well. I love Andy. I think Andy he's an amazing guy. He's a tremendous coach. And look, I mean, he was close a number of years here, man. He got close and it kind of ended. And I know he was saddened by the whole thing. Like, he felt like he wanted to keep going, man. He wanted to keep going. And the town kind of got weary because when you get close but don't win, it just kind of, exacerbated that situation. And so Jeffrey, who I think kind of succumbed to a little public pressure at that point, lets him go. I don't think Andy was all happy about that. I know that he's got a really good relationship with Jeffrey, who's a really good owner and the whole thing. But yeah, man, I think, remember, his trainer is a guy named Rick Burkhalter, who was from Philadelphia. His defensive coordinator, who's a dear friend of mine, has a house in Philadelphia, Steve Spagnuolo. So a lot of that whole group, they have roots with the Eagles. I mean, Andy made his bones here. He came here at 39 years old and was as a quarterbacks coach from Green Bay, and he carved out his career here, man. It's part of his blood.
No, I mean, yeah, and I was a Panthers fan. I mean, I guess now I'm just tired of them, like whatever. But I just remember all those years when Andy kept getting to the title game, and it was like, I mean, the NFC was just loaded back then, and it was at the end of it. It did feel like it was almost not like he didn't want to move on, but it was like both sides needed to move on. And you could see it the very next year when he got to KC. Like I remember being at the owners' meetings and he shows up and he's like, at the end of that Philly run, he looked exhausted. He looked exasperated. And he shows up at the owners' meetings and he's wearing this Hawaiian shirt and he looks like he's got some color to him. And he looked like re-energized. And I think, it's so weird too that like Doug Peterson, who's his old guy, comes back and wins a Super Bowl in Philly, and then Andy gets his Super Bowl, and then Sirianni, who coach for the Chiefs. It feels very, very like, I don't want to say incestual, but just very intertwined. It
is. In the storyline, I think it's a fascinating story, that piece of it. And you're right about Sirianni, because Sirianni, think about it, was when that staff got fired, Andy had to fire Sirianni. Like Andy had to say, listen, I hear great things about you, but I'm going to bring my own guys in. So listen, I wish you well. And like they had a really nice conversation. I was talking to Nick, and Nick was talking about telling that story of how Andy kind of officially let him go. And the interesting thing is that Nick and Andy have a lot in common, because Nick started very young like Andy did. And I think Jeffrey found his next Andy Reid. Like he was looking for it. And Doug was like, Doug's a good coach and he's extensive Andy. But I think Sirianni is a little bit more like Andy than Doug is. Do you remember Doug played? And I think Sirianni and Andy, they're really cerebral when it comes to the game. Really smart guys. I think the coaching is going to be fascinating. This game is going to be so interesting because you have Andy's a great offensive mind against a really, really stout Eagles defense. And then you got Spags, who is a great defensive mind against a really unique Eagles offense with great run game principles. And Sirianni and Shane Steichen, his OC, are really sharp X and O guys. So I think this whole thing's going to be really interesting.
I think so I kind of want to I want to ask you about Sirianni and then sort of get back to the X's and O's thing, specifically the Super Bowl, because I think that, Sirianni's press conference, like, I mean, it wasn't, this is why it's always stupid when we're like, well, he won the press conference. It's like, who gives a crap? Like, I'm like, I don't care if you could talk in front of, like, I mean, I shouldn't care. Sometimes we do care, but like Sirianni, I think the last 2 years, it really flies under the radar for whatever reason, but he is so good at adjusting like week to week game plans and attacking. Like against the Steelers and the Titans, he knew they were going to load up the box to try to stop the run, so he just went up top on them early on. Do you think that Sirianni gets the proper level of respect nationally?
No, I think he's a secret. I do. I think he's a secret. It was funny. There was a play where he was trying to draw somebody off sides. I guess it was the Giants game, and he yells, "I know what the bleep I'm doing." All right, and it was great. Like it was so on point. I don't know how he does not win Coach of the Year. No, we could all say, "Wow, the Eagles won 14-3." No one thought the Eagles were a 1 seed that would go 14-3 and lose 2 of those games with their backup quarterback, right? Like, right. I thought he could. His second year of his tenure.
I picked the Eagles to go to the Super Bowl, and I didn't think they'd go 14-3 and get the 1 seed.
Right? That's impressive, Will, because not a lot of people really thought that it would come together. Now, Howie Roseman did an amazing job putting this roster together. But Nick is a terrific offensive mind, and he's a secret. But he'll get his. Like, I was talking to him. I do think at some point everybody will go, wow, that dude is really good. And they'll be viewed upon as the Shanahan type, a really smart offensive mind. He's a great dude, too. He's all heart.
He's
in fact,
right? He's blue collar.
Dude, he fits this Philly scene so well. Like he's upstate New York. He's a big family guy. His brothers, his father was a coach. Like it's kind of who we are as Philadelphians. And it was beautiful. What was interesting is today on my show I have Doc Rivers on, right? And so we're talking about Sirianni, and Doc, coach of the Sixers, of course, says, who he reminds me of? He reminds me of Pete Carroll, young Pete Carroll. And I was like, damn, that's on point. Yes. Very loves his players, shows his guys love, and he just, fiery and emotional. And I think that's a great comp that Doc had.
Yeah, I think about, and Pete Carroll, obviously, now more a little like Silver Fox grandfather-y type, but he's still like on the sidelines, popping around. And I love coaches who are, and it depends too. Like, you gotta either like a Sirianni guy, you're probably either gonna love or hate. But I love the fact that he's a Frank Reich guy. And when Frank Reich got fired by the Colts and the Eagles went in and beat the Colts, I mean, he's getting in their fate. Like, he's like, look, he probably didn't know what he was doing. Like, I don't think he planned it. He just they're running their mouths at him, and they fired Reich, and he thought his dude got done dirty, so he was getting his back. Like he is very just like out there, and I think it does. You're right. It does like really really fit. Like when you think if you're driving,
because Philadelphians are unfiltered, right? Correct. Like it takes one. I know being one, and Sirianni's like that. Like there's no pretense about him. He's not polished, smart, very smart. But, nothing's orchestrated. Nothing's phony. What I love about him is that, he's just, we always talk about keeping it real and, being real. And Philadelphia's real and Sirianni's real. And he loves Jalen. Jalen really digs him, who's a great story. I mean, you want to talk about just a beautiful story. The Jalen Hurts story is just one that I adore the kid, man. And look, I doubted. I didn't know that he would turn into this kind of player. We all thought
saw this coming.
Nah, and it's funny. I had a friend of mine text me, saw him working out with Tom House, and he went, "Yo, man, your boy looks pretty good over out here." I was like, "Oh, cool," But everybody thought that this season it was like, all right, if Jalen's not the guy, you got picks because they have an extra pick this year. that you could trade up and get one of the quarterbacks because this draft is going to be so rich in quarterbacks. So that was the Eagles' plan, and it made a lot of sense to me. But right from the beginning, he showed that he looked good at camp, but he looked great during this season, man. His arm, and he had a lot of plays to make in the Tampa playoff game last year that he did not.
Yep. And
all those throws he made this year. And it's a testament to how hard he worked. And, he's a coach's kid and everything's wee. And he's a joy in that way.
All right. So we're going to take a quick break, but I have a theory about Jalen Hurts I want to run by you. I'll toss it out there after the break next.
Equality gets no timeouts or tryouts or second chances. February reminds us we can change our circumstances.
We give thanks to the athletes who took big risks, who beat the odds despite being oddballs because of their skin. But to change the status quo, you have to be willing when silence is comfortable. Speaking out is an act of resistance. This is the month we remember.
But more importantly, we dream
of something bigger.
Okay, so here's my theory on Jalen Hurts. Maybe it's not even a great theory. I don't even know. But I threw it out on HQ earlier and I sent it to some people. I think because Jalen Hurts was at Alabama in the national title game and pulled for Tua like halftime because they weren't winning, and then in Oklahoma and was a big recruit, and has now been in Philly where he's a big deal when he got drafted because Carson Wentz was there and that whole thing, that we collectively forget how young he is. He's just been omnipresent in the football world, football watching world is a big figure with like two national powerhouse teams with like very high profile. And then in Philly, it feels like he should be 28, but he's actually 24.
Yeah. And he also comports himself that way too. Like,
yes, he does. Yes.
He's a real mature dude. And I think, listen, he took a lot from Saban, man. Those Saban guys, they handle their business. So I have Michael Vick on yesterday, right? And Mike said, he goes, man, and I knew Mike from way back in the day. He's like, dude, I wish that I handled my business when I was his age in the league like Jalen did. Like Jalen does it right. And it's true. It's profound because, we all know what happened. Mike gets caught up and stuff. And, Jalen is just about football, man. He eats it. He breathes it, the whole thing. But, yeah, I agree. He appears to be much older and more seasoned than what he is. But let's also remember this, that when he was coming out, nobody thought he was among the elite players. Like, nobody thought that Jalen was.
He got smashed for taking him in the second round. Like, he got crushed for it.
Like, nobody thought he was going to be, Lawrence. You know what I mean? Nobody thought he'd be Trevor Lawrence or anything like that. And how he did. And listen, I didn't understand it. I mean, you have Howie's reasoning behind it, which was sound, but really was to control costs of the backup quarterback. He knew he had Wentz, and that Wentz was a guy who played hero ball, and that Wentz shelf life, he was going to get hurt. And then he wanted to make sure he wasn't spending Nick Foles money on his backup, and he would able to control it, grow a quarterback. And he also got that from Andy, because Andy was always about quarterback, and stockpile them.
AJ Feely, Kevin Cobb. Like, it's like, just don't trade with Andy Reid. Just don't trade quarterbacks with Andy Reid. Like, if you do, he's going to show up, and you're going to.
He traded Donovan. He traded Donovan in Washington.
What day was it? It was like a holiday when he traded him, wasn't it?
Easter Sunday.
Yeah. It's Easter Sunday. It's like, hey, all right.
Good memory.
Yeah. It's like, hey, Andy, some of us are trying to, celebrate the big guy here. Maybe give us a break here. We can't jump out of the church and go to. All right. So on the Super Bowl itself, like, I am curious because as we were talking about the X's and O's stuff with Sirianni and how he likes to attack in different ways. What do you think the Eagles will try to do offensively against Spags, knowing that, what we saw from Spags against Burrow in the championship game, like I think Romo mentioned it during the broadcast, but like out of nowhere, he dropped into cover 2, like randomly on a huge third down, and Burrow's like didn't know it, didn't see it coming, and so we'll get lots of that from Spags. Different coverages, mix it up. What do you think? Will the Eagles come in and like? Are they going to try and run Jalen Hurts out of Jump Street? Are they going to try and keep him from contact on the shoulder? Do they come out passing? What do you think they do?
So I think you got to run the ball. All right. Their offensive line is the best in football, as you know. And even in that game, Jalen's shoulder is bothering him. Like, look, His shoulder is a little sore. He was not on target in the first quarter last week against the Niners. Missed a couple open guys. He had AJ
Brown deep ball that he should have had him. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. But they ran the ball supremely well, and they ran backside, right? Like, one of the things that they took advantage of was, showing the look of the RPR and then running counter backside, which was really smart. And I could see them doing a lot of that because, look, if you're the Eagles, you want to bleed clock. Like, you don't want to get into the game of the 30s with Mahomes. I don't care what receivers he's got or doesn't have. Remember, Kelsey is, as we know, a star. He works the middle of the field, and that's the one area of the Eagles defense that's a little soft is the middle of the field. So Kelsey will have a big thing. What Sirianni needs to do is run the football. He's got to, and Hurts, listen, it's the last game of the year. So Jalen, who's a great runner, is just going to have to let it all hang out, and he's going to have to carry the ball because those RPRs are so hard to defend. And then once you lull them, then you can take a shot. You got Devontae, you got A.J. Brown, two great receivers who I guess Spags will man up on the outside with their young secondary. Yeah. So if you get them coming, run, then you take a shot. You take your shot down the field.
Yeah, and you get that single coverage against A.J. Brown, and it's like if you get that ball up there and it's anywhere on target, it's over. Like he ain't losing a rookie cornerback in coverage. Not that he's a grown-ass man. Defensively, I'm really curious. I've randomly thought about. I was doing like a video hit for CBS earlier, and like we were showing the clips and talking about Mahomes. It's like, what are they going to do? What do the Eagles do defensively? I sort of wonder. Do you think it's like because I think Andy, knowing what happened in the AFC Championship game, where really only one time Mahomes scrambled left and had that throw where he re-injured his ankle. I sort of like. I mean, not that they're going to cut off half the field or anything. But I think after watching that, they will know that they don't want Mahomes running to his left and throwing if possible because of just the mechanics of it. So I sort of wonder if Philly might try and force his hand a little bit and like. I think
you have to. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
You got to push him that way.
Yeah.
You do. You got to push him that way. I agree with it. Now, remember, Jonathan Gannon, who's Eagles DC, is not a blitzer guy. Right. He's a guy that likes to. He's got a great front, as you know. He'll play a 5-man front. He's got endless tackles. That's how he got him in Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph to go with Jordan Davis, who was a high pick. So they have a great front. It's just incredible. I mean, when I have not seen anything. You want to talk about underplayed? Hassan Reddick has been he's been ridiculous. I mean, dominant. Every bit as dominant as Von Miller as I've seen this season. Right, this season, Hassan Reddick has been unblockable.
Well, and he had a really good year in Carolina last year too, and I think part of it. I mean, I was honestly surprised. I guess he wanted to come back to Philly, maybe, or come back to the area.
Yeah. He's from Camden.
Yeah, he's Matt Rule's dude, though, like for playing with him at Temple. So, like, that's, it didn't work out in Arizona. Obviously, he had a good last year, but so people wondered if it was, like the Adrian Beltre syndrome where you just blow up in the final year of your deal right before you're about to get paid. But he proved it, and then he proved it again this year after getting paid. Like he is, and he's very versatile in how he can attack. And I think the edge rush, and this is again, like I go back just looking at the roster before the season, it's like, listen, if Hurts takes a step at all as a passer, like this roster resembles the 2017 team, and you took the pass rusher, like the pass rush has waves to it, just like it did, when you had Long and Graham and the whole group in 2017. Yeah. And
they had more talent. They're better in the back end too.
Yes,
with Slay and Bradbury and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. That's a big deal. Yeah. What's interesting, I think Andy attacks. I think this is a McKinnon game. I think Andy's going to use. Remember, he used Pacheco a little bit. Nobody's better at screens than Andy. He invented all that stuff.
He's the best in the history of football at screening.
Yeah, exactly. My guess is my read would be he goes to McKinnon a lot underneath. Because McKinnon, he didn't use McKinnon much the last two games.
He hasn't, yeah.
And I know Andy. Andy's brilliant. He's a diabolical mind. Like he's always thinking ahead. And I wouldn't be surprised if he trots McKinnon out because that's also a way to help Mahomes. All right, you're going to keep the defense off balance, right? I could see him going that route.
Interesting. So, and I think you're insinuating this. You may be outright saying it, but it's like, because I thought they would go to McKinnon against the Bengals because of Mahomes' ankle. It's like, because look, Pacheco is a really fun rookie, but McKinnon is an elite pass blocking running back, and he's like, if the Bengals get home, they're getting Mahomes. Like you need somebody back there, and plus you, like you mentioned, the screens, the dump offs, the quick outs. So I think you're sort of suggesting that Andy's like knows in the back of his mind, like if ideally he could have the McKinnon game be the last game of the season after putting like 2 weeks of Pacheco film out there.
Yeah, I think that's I just kind of knowing Andy. It's kind of how I look into his mind. I think that's where he goes. That would be my bet.
That's pretty diabolical if that's the case, and that does actually make total Andy Reid sense. Like, I mean, the guy's like incredible to. Like, I remember they signed Sammy Watkins, I guess, with the Chiefs one year. I remember just asking me, like, sitting down at the table at the breakfast table at the owners' meeting, thing, being like, asking me, like, "How are you going to use Sammy Watkins in the screen game?" He's like, "That's an interesting question, but I don't really think I'm going to tell you what I'm going to use Sammy for." So I was like, "All right, fine." I said, "You are going to use him in the screen game." All right. So we'll get you on this. What's your prediction for this game? I
think it's a great guy. I think it's going to be an epic game. Same. And I'll cop out and say Eagles by field goal, and it will be a fun, incredible football game that the nation will enjoy.
You think we get it back and forth, or is it mostly like kind of like?
No, I think it's going to be. I think there's going to be points. 30-27. I just think the offenses are too good.
Yeah.
And I think I think the Eagles are going to have to score because I think the Chiefs are going to score. They have not seen a quarterback like Mahomes yet, that offense like this. Again, you had Daniel Jones and you had Brock Purdy for a quarter. So, Mahomes is a different beast. But this Eagles team's really good, man. It's a really good Eagles team.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm going to predict in grease poles here.
All right. Hey, look, Andy. I would be right because look, I got an Eagles ticket. I got him at 38-1 to win the Super Bowl from way back in April. So
you'll be like me. I love it.
Go Birds! Let's go Birds, baby.
Go Birds, Will.
I appreciate you taking
You're
the time.
welcome here, bro. Anytime, buddy.
All right. Talk to you soon, man. See you, bud.
See you, buddy.
All right, man.